Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled you're joining us because today we are embarking on a purely sensory exploration.
Yeah, it really is. It's a completely different kind of journey.
Right. We are looking at a very specific piece of text. It was published recently, March 1st, 2026, by Anna Cuenca from Cuenca Cigars, Incorporated.
And it's such a fascinating document.
It is, because the mission today is to take something that is, deeply familiar to anyone who enjoys this culture, the spectrum of cigar strength, and look at how it's meticulously mapped out.
Exactly. We're examining the Montecristo lineup.
Yeah.
And specifically looking at how a single brand engineers an experience from mild to full-bodied.
Right, and it's not just a shopping list. We are treating this source material as a roadmap for the palate. We're tracing how an intensity scale moves from a profile characterized as smooth and creamy all the way up to what the author calls Nicaraguan power.
Which is a phenomenal way to examine palate progression, because for anyone who spends time exploring flavor profiles, strength is a term that gets thrown around constantly.
Oh, all the time.
Right, but often just as a synonym for nicotine content or just sheer aggression.
Yeah, just raw power.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the text we're looking at today approaches it entirely differently. It frames strength as a deliberate scaling of flavors, textures, and sensations, step by step.
It treats the progression not as a test of endurance, but as a carefully constructed staircase. Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the foundation.
The absolute ground level.
Right. The text begins in the mild to medium category, planting its flag with the Montecristo white.
Yes.
And the descriptors chosen here are very deliberate. The author calls it smooth, creamy, and balanced.
Those three words carry a lot of weight when you're analyzing sensory experiences.
They really do.
What's clever about starting the baseline at smooth is that it reminds us that true mildness isn't simply an absence of flavor.
Right. It's not just nothingness.
Exactly.
Yep.
It is an absence of sharp edges. It requires a massive amount of blending precision to create a profile that is genuinely creamy without it becoming flat or boring.
I mean, it requires just as much skill as blending a full-bodied powerhouse.
That is an excellent point.
Yeah.
It is really easy to assume the starting line is just the default setting.
Yeah.
But creamy implies a highly engineered texture.
Yes.
It's a mouthfeel. It coats the palate in a way that feels rich, but entirely gentle.
Right. It doesn't demand anything from you physically.
Exactly. And when the text adds the word balanced, it signals this harmonious playing field where no single note is fighting for dominance.
Everything is in its right place.
Right. So if you're listening to this and you happen to be newer to the intricacies of flavor mapping, or you simply prefer a lighter, elegant experience that doesn't demand your complete focus, this is the designated entry point.
It's the perfect place to start.
But the real journey begins when you decide to take a step up from that baseline.
Which brings us to the medium category.
Yes, the text highlights the Montecristo core collection here.
And what is crucial to note is that it doesn't abandon the foundation we just talked about.
Right. Does it just throw out the smoothness?
Exactly. It maintains the, quote, traditional Montecristo balance, but it introduces a new variable.
Yeah.
The author notes that it provides, and this is key, slightly more structure.
Structure. That is such an evocative term to apply to something you are tasting.
It really is.
How does a sensory experience transition from simply being a creamy, harmonious blend to suddenly possessing a defined structure? My mind immediately goes to architecture.
What's fascinating here is how that single architectural concept changes the entire framework of the tasting experience.
Right.
Think about that creamy profile of the Montecristo white. It's almost fluid.
Yeah. Very liquid.
It washes over the palate uniformly, entirely smooth, without any resistance. But the moment you introduce slightly more structure, you are fundamentally altering how the palate interacts with the smoke.
Let's build on that architectural idea for a second.
Sure.
If the smooth, creamy profile of the mild category is a freshly poured concrete foundation.
Okay, I like that.
Right. It's level, it's stable, entirely seamless. Then adding structure is like putting up the wooden framing of a house.
Mm-hmm.
You are suddenly defining the shape of the room.
Oh, that's perfect.
The concrete foundation is still there, providing the balance, but now there are vertical lines. There are corners.
That framing analogy works perfectly because it explains the mechanical shift in tasting.
Yeah.
Because the palate naturally searches for edges in a flavor profile. When an experience is purely smooth, there's nothing to catch your attention.
Right, it just glides by.
Exactly. But when the core collection introduces structure, it gives the flavors a scaffolding to hang on to.
Scaffolding, yeah.
The sensory experience becomes dimensional. You begin to feel the boundaries of the profile. It demands a tiny bit more attention from your senses because there is a discernible shape to the draw.
So the move from mild to medium isn't about being hit with a sudden wave of heavy, intense flavor.
No, not at all.
Which I think is a common misconception, right? People think medium means spicy.
Yeah, they conflate the two constantly.
But according to this guide, it is a highly calculated, gentle step. You are just moving from a fluid sensation to something with a bit of a backbone.
Exactly.
But then we reach the middle ground. We transition from medium into the medium to full category.
The Montecristo Platinum.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, because the entire vocabulary of the text shifts gears here.
It really does.
We aren't just talking about framing anymore.
Not at all. The terminology becomes much more complex. The author describes the Montecristo Platinum as being richer and more layered.
Layered.
Yes, specifically noting that it offers deeper flavor notes and increased body.
Layering and body. Let's spend some time dissecting that, because we have moved far beyond a simple structure now.
Oh, absolutely.
If we pivot from architecture to a musical composition, I think we can really visualize this progression.
Okay, lay it out.
So the Montecristo White, that smooth foundation, is a beautiful, balanced solo acoustic guitar.
Beautiful, yeah.
Moving to the core collection and adding structure is like bringing in a subtle snare drum. It gives the melody a defined rhythm, some edges.
A tempo to follow.
But the Platinum, with its layers and increased body, that feels like bringing in the bass line, a piano, and a string section all at once.
That is a great way to put it, because the cognitive load of the experience completely changes when you introduce layers.
Cognitive load, I like that phrasing.
Yeah, because when the text points to a profile being richer and more layered, it's signaling that your palate is no longer processing a unified, single-track sensation.
Right.
You're tasting the foundation, yes, but there is a distinct flavor note sitting on top of that.
And another entirely different note acting as a backdrop.
Precisely. Your senses have to work harder to parse out those individual elements.
Yeah.
And then, as you mentioned, there's the concept of increased body, which is a distinct metric from strength.
I am so glad you brought that up, because those terms get conflated constantly in this world.
Almost interchangeably, yeah.
But they shouldn't be. When we read increased body in this specific context, my mind translates that to physical weight.
Yes, the actual density.
Right, the literal density of the smoke in the mouth.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the difference between taking a sip of whole milk versus a sip of heavy cream.
That's the perfect analogy.
You aren't necessarily getting spicier flavors with cream, you are just getting a heavier physical presence.
That is the exact sensory distinction. The physical sensation of the draw becomes denser, it's more coating, and far more commanding.
Yeah.
And understanding that distinction between body and strength is critical for navigating this roadmap. The author explicitly identifies a target audience for the Montecristo Platinum based on this exact principle.
Oh, right. The guide has specific recommendations.
Yes. The advice is clear. If you are seeking a richer flavor profile without overwhelming spice, this is your destination.
That is such a highly sophisticated middle ground.
Right.
The text actively separates richness and body from heat and spice.
It does.
It proves that you can increase the depth of the experience, you can add complex layers, and increase the physical weight on the palate without resorting to aggressive, sharp notes.
Right. You don't need the heat to have the depth.
Exactly. It's for the person who wants that deeply engaging, multi-layered symphony playing a rich chord, but who doesn't want the crashing cymbals just yet.
But, of course, the spectrum doesn't end there.
No, it certainly doesn't.
Some palates are actively seeking out those crashing cymbals.
They want the volume turned all the way up.
They do. They want the absolute peak of intensity, which brings us to the full-bodied category.
But the heavyweights.
These are the undisputed heavyweights of the lineup, according to the text.
So what does this all mean when we finally reach the maximum strength level? Because the roadmap doesn't narrow down to a single pinnacle here.
No, it branches out.
It branches out.
Well,
It gives us two entirely distinct profiles sharing the same top tier, and the contrast in their descriptions is stunning.
it really is a fascinating split.
First, we have the Montecristo 1935 Anniversary Nicaragua. And the author defines this specific profile as delivering refined strength with complexity and longer transitions.
Let's look closely at that phrasing, refined strength.
Yeah.
It tells us that even at the absolute ceiling of the intensity scale, the experience is meticulously managed.
It's not just a free-for-all.
Right. It isn't unbridled or chaotic. But the most revealing part of that description is the pairing of complexity with longer transitions.
A transition implies an evolution over time. It's the narrative arc of the tasting experience.
Exactly.
The way a profile presents itself in the first third is fundamentally different from the middle and different again at the finale. But the modifier, longer, is what catches my eye there.
Why is that?
Well, why do longer transitions matter when you're dealing with peak strength?
Think about the mechanics of processing a full-bodied experience. A profile that hits you with maximum strength and complexity all at once. It can be exhausting to the palate.
Oh, absolutely overwhelming.
Right. But when that strength is rolled out via longer transitions, your senses actually have time to react.
Oh, I see.
It's the difference between a sudden jump scare in a horror movie and a brilliantly paced, slow burn thriller.
That is a great comparison.
The layers we discussed in the platinum category are now in motion. A specific, heavy note might slowly recede over 20 minutes, allowing a new, intricate flavor to gradually take the stage.
So it's a dynamic, moving target. A long transition means the flavor is drawn out, requiring sustained focus.
Yes.
You aren't just consuming something, you are tracking a moving narrative. That is the path of the 1935 anniversary Nicaragua.
But right next to it.
Yes. Occupying that same maximum full-bodied tier is the Montecristo Nicaragua by A.J. Fernandez.
Right.
And the language used to describe this profile couldn't be more different.
It is a complete departure from the 1935.
Total departure.
The text defines the Nicaragua by A.J. Fernandez using terms like bold spice, Nicaraguan power, and full-bodied structure.
Bold spice and Nicaraguan power. If the 1935 anniversary is a slow burn thriller, this sounds like an action movie.
Without a doubt.
Those words do not suggest a slow, gentle evolution. They suggest immediate, undeniable impact right out of the gate.
Yes, it's visceral.
We talked earlier about the core collection having slightly more structure, likening it to wooden framing in a house.
Right.
When the text uses the phrase full-bodied structure here, we're talking about steel girders.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it reveals something profound about how we categorize peak experiences.
How so?
Well, even when you reach the absolute ceiling of the strength scale, there are two fundamentally different philosophies of power.
Yep.
You have the path of refined complexity, which demands patience as you track those long, slow transitions over time.
Right, the thriller.
And then you have the path of structural immediacy. The power of the A.J. Fernandez profile isn't hidden behind an evolving narrative. The power is the defining feature.
It's right there in front of you.
Exactly. It's built to support maximum intensity and bold spice from the very first draw.
It is a monument rather than a journey.
That's a beautiful way to phrase it.
So we have traced this entire roadmap, starting from that smooth, creamy foundation, moving up through the introduction of structure, layering on the body, all the way to these two diverging peaks of full-bodied power.
We've covered the whole spectrum.
We have. And the ultimate question the author leaves us with is, how do you, the reader, choose your path?
And the beauty of this text is that it synthesizes all of this complex sensory vocabulary into a set of highly practical, direct rules for the consumer.
It completely cuts through the intimidation factor.
Entirely.
Let's lay out those direct rules for everyone listening, because they serve as a perfect summary.
Sure.
If you are new to this, or you just want an effortless experience, you stay in the smooth, creamy, balanced zone of the white.
Right, the foundation.
If you want richer flavor and heavier body, but you actively want to avoid overwhelming spice, you step into the layered middle ground of the platinum.
The bass line and strings.
Exactly. And if your palate prefers bold, heavily structured profiles, you embrace the peak of the spectrum with the Nicaragua or the 1935, deciding whether you want pure power or evolving transitions.
It gives the consumer an actionable vocabulary.
Actionable, yes.
Instead of just guessing based on a label, you're matching your palate's specific mood, creamy, layered, transitioning, or bold, to a clearly defined profile.
And to ground this all in the reality of the source material, this roadmap is provided by Cuban Cigars.
Located in Hollywood, Florida.
Right. Their text notes that they offer this entire premium selection, and they make a point to highlight risk-free buying and free shipping across the contiguous USA for any orders over $99.
Which is actually a vital piece of context here.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. By highlighting the logistics, they are actively removing the barrier to entry.
Right, making it accessible.
If a consumer is reading this roadmap, trying to decide if their palate is ready to step up from the core collection structure to the platinum's layered body, making the acquisition process seamless means the consumer can focus entirely on the sensory exploration.
Oh, I see.
The logistics are designed to be as smooth as the entry-level profile itself.
That is a brilliant way to frame it.
Yeah.
The mechanics of getting the product shouldn't have more friction than the product itself.
Exactly.
So to recap the journey we've analyzed today, we started at a baseline characterized by an engineered lack of sharp edges, a smooth, creamy entry.
The poured concrete.
Right. We observed the introduction of structure, giving the palate a defined shape to hold on to. We navigated the middle ground, where the text introduced physical body and cognitive layers while avoiding heat,
And finally, we scaled the peak.
uncovering that fascinating duality between the slow, evolving complexity of long transitions and the immediate, undeniable force of full-bodied structural power.
You know, this raises an important question, though, when you step back and look at the text as a whole.
Where's your head at?
Well, we're looking at a single brand engineering a spectrum that ranges from a perfectly gentle, creamy balance to absolute Nicaraguan power.
Yeah.
It forces a reader to really evaluate the nature of their own sensory preferences.
That's interesting. Are you thinking about the physical limitations of the palate?
Yeah.
Like what people can physically handle?
Not just the physical, it's more about the intersection of the physical and the mental.
Okay, unpack that for me.
The text ranks these profiles along an axis of strength. But when you look closely at the descriptors being used, words like complexity, structure, layers, and transitions, it leaves you with a lingering philosophical thought.
All right, let's hear it.
How much of our preference on any given day is based on the actual chemical, physical strength of a profile versus our psychological readiness to handle the cognitive load?
Oh, wow. That is a phenomenal distinction.
Right.
Are we avoiding the full-bodied tier because the physical spice is literally too intense? Or are we avoiding it because our brains simply aren't in the mood to do the analytical work?
Precisely. Tracking a deeply layered, highly structured profile with long, slow transitions over the course of an hour requires focus.
It demands your attention.
Yes. Sometimes you simply don't want to analyze an architectural masterpiece. You just want to relax on a smooth, poured, concrete foundation.
That makes perfect sense.
So when we say we prefer a mild profile, we might actually be saying we prefer a low cognitive load. We want the harmonious balance that doesn't ask us to constantly parse out evolving layers.
And conversely, when you reach for that A.J. Fernandez profile with his full-bodied structure and bold spice, you're actively seeking out an experience that commands your attention.
You want the steel girders.
You want the seal girders.
Yeah.
You want the immediacy. It isn't just a tolerance for physical strength. It's a desire for mental engagement.
Exactly.
That is an incredibly profound thought to leave off on. Is it the physical intensity that dictates our choices, or our psychological readiness to engage with a structurally demanding experience?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
It really is something to seriously ponder the next time you find yourself navigating a spectrum of strength, regardless of what you happen to be tasting. Well, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the architecture of the palate. We appreciate you spending your time with us, and we will catch you on the next one.